Welcome to our presentation on St. Thomas More's Utopia. It's of course by yours truly, Matthew Wayland, Trevor McGregor, and Spencer Merritt. So to begin, I'm going to briefly go over the historical context of More's theory. So firstly, Sir Thomas More lived in London, and he studied law in London for a large part of his life. After doing so, he decided to follow the will of God and become a priest. In May 1515, More began in the Low Countries and completed, after his return to London, his novel called Utopia, which was published in December 1516. The book was an immediate success with the audience for which More wrote it for. And this was the humanists, an elite group of public officials. The first communist / egalitarian ideas that were seen within Tudor London were the ones that were brought up in More's novel, Utopia. And these ideas not only challenged the Tudor society rules, but its regulations and its standards as well. And like I said, at this time, there was just no type of thinking or no piece of writing that challenged the rules and ways of society in such a way that More's Utopia did. Okay, so a brief summary of More's Utopia. So a mysterious character named Raphael Hythloday describes Utopia to More, or the character of More in the story, in support of the argument that communism is the only cure against egoism in private and public life, is the analysis. Within Raphael Hythloday's description, he says that Utopia is a quote-unquote perfect society, which he then highlights through 9 elements of their society. And these 9 elements are the superior geography of the Utopia, the superior city layouts, the utopian government and justice systems, the way that the utopian people work and their professions, as well as the lack of a currency in Utopia. Utopian societal norms, such as familial rankings, stuff like that. Utopian travel regulations. People would have to ask for permission if they wanted to travel to the different cities. Utopian slave regulations, which doesn't really make sense in a quote-unquote egalitarian society that would have slaves, but I guess at the time, slaves were just too integral to life. Utopian military practices, which generally strayed away from any sort of bloodshed, tried to solve conflicts in other ways. And finally, the freedom of religion, which was a very unheard of part of this theory, especially during Tudor England times, which were much in Tudor England, which was deeply rooted in Catholicism. Finally, some important passages from Thomas More's Utopia. The chapter that is titled Their Occupations, I think, is very significant, as well as the chapter titled Social Relations is also extremely significant. So these chapters, both of them are very significant because they both put emphasis on equality of work, as you can see in their occupations, which says that all people do equal amounts of work, even the men and the women. They all do equal amounts of work, and that helps their society to flourish. And equality between people, which is, of course, people are doing an equal amount of work, but as well in the home, it was supposed to be an equal share of work in the home, and there weren't, all the government officials were elected in a very equal way. Both these chapters show how, just generally, how the utopia would function on a day-to-day basis, which would consist mostly of people working, doing their professions and doing their jobs, and then they would spend their little bits of free time studying or working at home or whatever, doing whatever they really needed to do. And finally, I think the most significant part of these two chapters and the theory as a whole is that it shows kind of in this utopian society that there's a lack of free will found within the utopian people. This can be seen in how their jobs are appointed to them rather than chosen. And it's kind of like a colony of ants almost, where all the people are doing what they need to do for the colony to survive, not so much what they want to do as human beings. And finally, some relevant commentary on the reading would be there's some holes and some contradictions that can be found within the reading, which include that at the beginning of the reading, it is said that women do equal amounts of work as the men. Right? As I said before, they're very egalitarian, and everyone who their professions, women and men, work the same hours. However, later in the reading, it is said that women are also expected to take care of children, take care of the home, which isn't very equal, as they're also doing more work than the men. And secondly, the utopia is said to be an equal society, yet it still involves large amounts of slavery, which is not equal at all, as of course we know slavery is not a very egalitarian practice. Finally, it is quite clear that utopia is a first example of perfect communist society, which we know on paper seems to function, but in practice, it's been historically proven that communism is not the most effective political structure.